Welcome, everyone. We're here today to share with you some information about our 2022-2023 CalCurriculum Math Adoption Cohort. I am Shanna Estep. I am the Senior Specialist on the Partnerships team for EdReports, and I am joined today by
Hi, I am Maria Krivoruchko. I am the director of the innovation team at Pivot Learning.
We are a joint project between Pivot Learning and EdReports, and our goal is to really support districts to adopt and implement high quality instructional materials by providing resources, guidance, and reviews and reports from EdReports on our website.
Great. And as Shanna mentioned, this is a joint project between Pivot Learning and EdReports. Shanna will introduce EdReports in just a second. But from the Pivot Learning side, you'll see our mission here on the screen. And we work to ensure that we provide a rigorous, relevant, and inclusive public education for all students. And we do that by developing instructional coherence and improving teaching and learning. So we are a public nonprofit that's technical assistance related, and we are based in Oakland, California, though we work in other states as well.
Thanks, Maria. EdReports is a national nonprofit. Our main work is reviewing and reporting on the curriculum that is available in the K-12 space. Currently, we have reports for ELA, mathematics, and science, although science is not K-12 yet. Our mission is to increase the capacity for educators, administrators, the community at large to seek, identify, and demand the highest quality instructional materials. We do that by using educators and really focusing on the evidence that we get from our educator reviews. So today, our short webinar, we will cover the following objectives. We're going to share a little bit about California Curriculum Collaborative, which we just did. We're going to learn about the overall materials adoption cohort structure, the expectations, why we're doing this work, and then the next steps to help you be ready to apply for this adoption cohort. Before we launch into the what, I do want to mention a little bit about why we're doing this work. We know there is a lot of research actually that tells us that materials are critical to the decisions that teachers make every day. Recent research has shown that materials impact students directly by their use of materials, but also by influencing teachers' instructional decisions, their practice, their behavior, etc. And so knowing the importance of instructional materials, we believe how we select those materials is also just as important as the materials themselves. We also know that the use of high quality instructional materials falls behind, especially in California in some ways, the overall market. We have reviewed about 95% of the math materials K-12 on the market at EdReports. And you can see here on the left-hand side of the slide, we've got about a third of those materials that actually meet the expectations for alignment. And that would be alignment to the standards and instructional shifts, but also those usability markers around differentiation, assessment, technology, teacher support, etc. And a large percentage of those materials still do not meet. On the right hand, you can see that in California, about 40% of teachers are using at least one thing aligned to content standards. This is actually from our 2020 State of the Market report. We have a new report out, so I would encourage you to check that out at edreports.org under resources because the data has changed slightly. All this to say is we know that materials, high quality instructional materials are very important, but we also know that they sit within and should sit within a coherent instructional system, that high quality materials are tied and connected to professional learning that is curriculum based and driven with regular observation and feedback to teachers and to school leaders and to district leaders. And those materials need to make sure that they are selected and chosen for the very unique community that the district and the teachers and the schools are serving.
Great, thanks, Shanna. And so, grounded in the research that Shanna just shared, we'd love to share a little bit more about what actually happens in the cohort, a few details. So within the cohort, we really focus on the California context. So what you see on the screen here is just the connection between the California Common Core State Standards, the upcoming framework that's due to be adopted this summer of 2022, and the eventual state adopted materials list, which is currently scheduled in the fall of 2024. So within the context of California, we really try to focus on the standards and the math shifts within the standards and what this means for the framework and for teaching and learning. That's the guidance that's provided there. And of course, what that means for materials. So everything that you'll hear will really be grounded in these three things you see on the screen: standards, frameworks, and materials. And we really try to make sure that it is relevant to your context as a California district or California public CMO. We do encourage our districts in the cohort to adopt off cycle or earlier than the next list will come out in 2024, but we're here to support you whenever that time comes to make sure you have the best practices and resources to really have a great adoption process. So within our cohort, this is really the design. This is what we're trying to prepare LEAs, so again, public school districts and CMOs to do. We want folks to understand the urgent need for high quality instructional materials and what that means for all students. We are going to be focusing on English learners specifically in some portions of the cohort, but we really mean, what does this mean for all of your students, students with disabilities, all of the students that you serve? How do you lead a strong materials adoption process focused on the specific needs of your community? And how do you engage your stakeholders? How do you build shared knowledge of the elements of high quality instructional materials? And how do you ground that in the expectations of the mathematical content? And finally, how do you develop and clearly communicate plans for your selection process? And how do you begin to plan for your launch and implementation of new materials? Because we know that your adoption and selection process is not separate from your launch and implementation in order for all folks to be on board and know how to implement these new materials. So this is our cohort process that comes to us from Ed Reports, and these are the different stages that you will be a part of within the cohort. So we're going to take you through developing your local lens. That means diving into your district's specific student achievement data, stakeholder engagement data, any data that you have to really help you to narrow down the context and figure out what is it that your specific district or CMO needs in your next set of math materials. Then we'll work with you to establish a process. So this is, you can think of as kind of project planning, making sure you have a really strong, well-planned, well-organized process to lead the adoption process throughout your district. We'll then talk about how to get to know all of the materials that are out on the market, which Shanna mentioned in a previous slide, and how do you winnow down those choices into just a few that you are going to investigate later on. We'll talk about the investigation process and what that can look like for your district and some of the different ways where you can make your final decision and some of the decision processes that you can utilize. And finally, we'll just touch on how you should be thinking about your launch and implementation processes, because again, your adoption process and your implementation should not be separate. And this is the timeline for the cohort. So in the very left-hand column, you'll see September. That's where you can think of as the very beginning. Our application is going to be due on August 30th, and we will notify all districts whether they're accepted into the cohort by September 6th. When you're notified, you're also going to get an onboarding webinar and some pre-work that you will complete with your teams prior to the first session. And our first session is going to be November 9th. The second session will be November 10th. So you'll see that in the November column. We are planning to host our meetings in person in Orange County, California. And there is a little asterisk there. We are super excited and hopeful that we can meet all together for this cohort experience. So you can really take advantage of working with other districts who are going through the same process. And we are also very cognizant and want to be very intentional about the fact that we're all continuing to live through a global pandemic. And of course, that may mean that there's potential changes in format depending on what happens next. So we always commit to following all local COVID-19 guidelines and mandates. So for example, social distancing, mask usage, etc., for all in-person engagements. But we will update you well in advance should this format change. And for example, parts of it may be virtual. But again, we are really hopeful that this will be in person and the dates should not change. So you'll see them here, November 9th and 10th will be the first cohort meetings. You'll see the next cohort meetings aren't until January, so January 25th through the 26th. So same thing in Orange County, California, really hopeful that we'll have those great in-person days together. But you'll also see that in December and February, there are some asynchronous documents and plans. A really important part of this cohort is to take the best practices and resources that you will receive in the cohort and continue to work with your team to really plan this adoption process. So you're going to have some asynchronous assignments to complete between the different sessions to just increase your likelihood of a really strong, successful, robust process. In March, we'll have an asynchronous webinar for you, planning launch and implementation. And then in April, you will either be ready to adopt if your timeline allows for that, or you might be still continuing to plan if your timeline looks a little bit different, and that is okay. In terms of the in-person engagements, everything that you see here is free to attend. I will be talking about a stipend that should help you to offset the costs of bringing some teachers to this work. So you'll see that on the next slide, but did want to mention that we do not cover travel. So the actual travel to the location and any hotel costs will be up to the district. So hopefully with the last few minutes, you're excited about the work and you think this might be a good opportunity for your team. And we wanted to just quickly talk about the application requirements. This is open to all public school districts and CMOs in California. And you must be able to commit to sending a team of 4 to 8 people. And you'll see some categories of the folks that we're hoping can join us. And this is what it looks like. You should bring at least one person from district leadership. So that could be your superintendent, a CAO, a director of curriculum, etc. So at least one participant from the district leadership side. You should also bring at least one school leader. So for example, a principal, AP, coach, an EL specialist, somebody from the school leadership team, and at least 2 classroom leaders, teachers. We do recommend thinking about bringing both a general education and special education teachers. Again, at least 2 participants. You can certainly bring more than that. Again, the team can be up to 8 people, but these are the categories of folks that should be included. Your entire team should be available to attend all 4 in-person session dates. And that will be a requirement in order to receive a $1,600 stipend, which you will receive at the end of the cohort. Again, we are hoping that this helps to offset some of the costs of securing substitute teachers for your classroom leaders. A few other quick requirements here, which I already mentioned. So again, you'll need to cover your travel and meals for the in-person sessions. We will provide a light breakfast and lunch for your team, but you will be expected to cover hotel and any other incidental costs if you're staying the night. And we are looking for districts and CMOs that are looking to adopt new K-12 math materials in the near future. Ideally, that's before the 2024 California state list is adopted. But again, sometime in the near future is what we're looking for. There is one last note here of folks that are looking to adopt middle grades, so grades 6th through 8th math materials, and districts that serve high populations of students of color, students that qualify for free or reduced price lunch, and those who serve high populations of English language learners will be given priority in the cohort. And you will see the application due date here at the bottom. Again, we will be notifying all districts of their acceptance by September 6th. So last thing for the expectations here, again, you should be able to attend all 4 of the meetings. You should be bringing the same team of 4 to 8 people each time. We'll ask you to name a team sponsor. So that's going to be the advocate that is able to oversee the work and remove any barriers that the team may be experiencing, and a driver. So that's typically the manager or the coordinator of the work. Usually you can think of that as kind of the project manager for the adoption process. We're also going to ask you to tell us who the point person is. Typically, that's either the sponsor or the driver, and that's the person we'll be communicating with most frequently, though we'll be communicating with everybody on your team for certain things. And of course, we ask you to participate fully in all activities during and between sessions, and that does include that onboarding webinar, an implementation webinar after the cohort sessions, and some asynchronous planning between the sessions. Finally, you should plan to engage with stakeholders that are not going to be on your committee or the team that attends. For example, families and students that are going to be really important stakeholders in your materials adoption process. And of course, how will we support you? So we are super excited to facilitate a process with your district or CMO team to drive the adoption of new high quality math materials this year, or to learn to apply later if that's what your timeline looks like. We'll be checking in with your team between meetings and providing support as you drive your process forward. We will share lots of free resources, tools, best practices to support your adoption process. And we'll provide you information outside of Pivot and Ed Reports, and you'll receive information from the California Department of Education, English Learner Success Forum, and others as you engage in this process. And finally, there will also be an opportunity at the end of the cohort if your district is planning to adopt soon and would like some implementation support to receive a partial grant subsidy to work with Pivot Learning for your implementation process as well. Hopefully, after listening to this quick webinar, you are really excited to apply. So you'll see the link here. And this link is also posted on our website. So hopefully you are ready to fill that out. But if you do have some additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can email us at any time at info@calcurriculum.org. So on behalf of Shanna and myself, Maria, we are really hoping to hear from you soon. Again, please reach out if you have any questions, and hope to see you in Orange County in November. Thanks all.
Have a great day.